Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Katia, and today I'm going to be doing another Through the Tabs for War and Peace. I have been absolutely devouring and loving this book, and the last update I gave was for Book 2, Part 1. So now I'm going to be doing Book 2, Part 2 all the way until Book 3, so this huge chunk of pages here. If you haven't seen the first Through the Tabs video, I will link it below, but that is like this first huge chunk, and it's absolutely incredible. I'm absolutely loving it. So I'm going to be starting on page 371. So if you are using the same edition that I am, this is the Oxford World Classics edition, and if you don't want to be spoiled, then bye. It was nice seeing you. Maybe come back when you have read it. And if you don't mind spoilers or you've already read the book, then hello, hi, welcome. I'm going to be talking about War and Peace. So, I wanted to start off with part 2. So the first tab I have is a ride. So I have an orange tab, which is like debate points, and I have written, was Tolstoy religious, or was this just included? Because okay, let me just read the quote. Who invented him, if he does not exist? Whence came that conception of existence of such an incomprehensible being? Why didn't thou, and why did the whole world, conceive the idea of an existence of such an incomprehensible being, a being all-powerful, eternal, and infinite in all his attributes? And then later, if it were a man whose existence thou didn't doubt I could bring him to thee, could take him by the hand and show him to thee. But how can I, an insignificant mortal, show his omnipotence, his infinity, and his mercy to one who is blind, or one who shuts his eyes that may not see or understand him, and may not understand his own vileness and sinfulness? He paused again. Who art thou? Thou dream words. He went on with a somber and scornful smile. And thou art more foolish and reasonable than a little child, who, playing with the parts of a skillfully manned watch, dares to say that, as he does not understand its use, he does not believe in the master who made it. To know him is hard. For ages, from our forefather Adam to our own day, we labor, and to attain that knowledge we are still infinitely far from our aim. But in our lack of understanding, we see our weakness and his greatness. So he's just like going off on a tangent about God. And I'm like, okay. He does a lot of philosophical stuff, and it just takes me right out of the story. Like, I understand that this isn't just a novel, like this is War and Peace, like the novel, but it's kind of takes me completely out of the story, which I'm really interested in, to talk about this like huge philosophical ideals, and it's just like not my forte, but that's a whole other thing. Oh my god, this part makes me cry. I literally cried during this part. So, here we go. So Lise is already dead. The mother of Nikolai, which is Andrei's son. And so then he comes into the room and he sees that Princess Maria is no longer by the cot. And this is what it says. As often happens after long sleeplessness and long anxiety, he was seized by an unreasoning panic. It occurred to him that the child was dead. All that he saw and heard seemed to confirm this terror. All is over, he thought, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He went to the cot in confusion, sure that it would find it empty, and that the nanny had been hiding the dead baby. He drew the curtain aside, and for some time his frightened, restless eyes could not find the baby. At last he saw him. The rosy boy had tossed about till he lay across the bed with his head lower than the pillow, and was smacking his lips in his sleep and breathing evenly. So I literally started reading this, started crying, because I was like, the baby's dead. And then the baby's not dead, so it's all good. And then I have a love tab, and it says, Prince Andrei longed to snatch up, to squeeze, to hold to his heart this helpless little creature, but dared not to. He stood over him, gazing at his head and at the little arms and legs which showed under the blanket. He heard a rustle behind him, and a shadow appeared under the curtain of the cot. He did not look round, but still gazing at the infant's face, listened to his regular breathing. And then later he says, this is the only thing left to me now, which I was just like, that's depressing. Then I have plot. Okay, so this is back during the war part, and the idea that in reality, that war comes with too many hurt and dead and not nearly enough doctors. So basically there are 400 people that are hurt, and the doctors are like completely vexed and can't quite handle the situation. This is page 431, and it's just really hard because they can't quite handle it, and I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean. It's just difficult and hard to comprehend, because that's not a word. Then I have Major Denisov might be dead. He's not, but there was a lot of sad tabs I have going on here for that part, but we're just going to move past it because it's not that interesting. Then I have this beautiful imagery. At the edge of the road stood an oak, probably 10 times the age of the birches that formed the forest. It was 10 times as thick and twice as tall as they. It was an enormous tree, its girth twice as great as a man could embrace, and evidently long ago some of its branches had been broken off and bark scarred. With its huge ungainly limbs sprawling unsymmetrically, and its gnarled hands and fingers, it stood an aged, stern, and scornful monster among the smiling birch trees. Only the dead-looking evergreen firs dotted about the forest, and this oak refused to yield at the charm of spring, or notice either the spring or the sunshine. And then I have a quote that says, "Are you not weary of that stupid, meaningless, constantly repeated fraud? Always the same and always a fraud. There is no spring, no sun, no happiness. Look at those cramped dead firs, ever the same, and at me too, sticking out broken and barked fingers just where they have grown. Whether from the back or my sides, or as they had grown, so I stand, and I do not believe in your hopes and your lies." And then later, that it was not for him to begin anything anew, but that he must live out his life content not to do harm and not to disturbing himself or desiring anything. This is page 448 and 449. And I really liked the juxtaposition of the spring and that whole imagery of it, and then this other idea of just that there's no spring, no sun, no happiness, and I think it's Andre. Yeah, Andre is seeing this beautiful nature on one end, but then kind of seeing the harm and the badness of it on this other end, and it's super interesting, and I don't know, I'm just freaking loving this book. But continuing. Then I have a plot that this is about Pierre, I believe. Let me check. Yes, Pierre. This is page 469. I am again living with my wife. My mother-in-law came to me in tears and said that Helene was here and that she implored me to hear her, that she was innocent and unhappy at my desertion, and much more. I knew that I had once let myself to see her. I should not have strength to go on refusing what she wanted. Later, I told my wife that I begged her to forget the past, to forgive me for whatever wrong I may have done her, and that I had nothing to forgive. It gave me joy to tell her this. She need not know how hard it was for me to see her again. I have settled on the upper floor of the big house, and have experienced a happy feeling of regeneration. So I really, really liked this part, just because he's begging her to forget what he did to her, which was basically threatened to murder her. And then he's like, she need not know how hard it was for me to see her. Like, bitch, you're the one that tried to freaking murder her, but it's fine. And then, yes, I don't know what else I was going to say. Then I have another plot point on page 475 that the Rostovs' monetary affairs had not improved during the 2 years they spent in the country, was such that the debts inevitably increased every year. Then, soon after their arrival in Petersburg, Berg proposed to Vera and was accepted. Later, in the Finnish War, he also managed to distinguish himself. He had picked up a scrap of grenade that had killed an aide-de-camp standing near the commander-in-chief and had taken it to his commander. Then, later, 4 years before meeting a German comrade in the stalls of a Moscow theater, Berg had pointed out Vera Rostova to him and said in German, "She shall be my wife," and from that moment had made up his mind to marry her. Now in Petersburg, having considered the Rostovs' position and his own, had decided that the time had come to propose. Then, we were describing Berg's chief characteristics was such a naive and good-natured egotism that the Rostovs involuntarily came to think that it would be a good thing, since he himself had firmly convinced that it was good. Indeed, excellent. Moreover, the Rostovs' affairs were seriously embarrassed, as the suitor could not but know, and above all, Vera was 24 and had been taken out everywhere, and though she was certainly good-looking and sensible, no one had up to now had proposed to her, so they gave their consent. So basically, they're just like, she's 24, she's way too old, let's just marry her off to Berg. So that's pretty much what happens there. Then I have another sad tab on page 480 and 481. So Natasha and tell her the old times must be forgotten, that in spite of everything, she could not be his wife, and that he had no means, and that they would never let her marry him. It seemed to her mother and Sonia that Tasha was in love with Boris as of old. She sang him his favorite songs, showed him her album, making him write in it, did not allow him to allude to the past, letting it be understood how delightful was the present. And every day he went away in the fog, without having said what he meant to, and not knowing what he was doing or why it came or how it all ended. He left off visiting Helene and received reproachful notes from her every day, and yet he continued to spend whole days with the Rostovs. So basically, we're just reminiscing on Natasha and Boris's relationship and how they just never got to be a thing. And I wrote, even with the age difference, I kind of wish for them to be together. And then we later find out that she's actually with, what the frick is his name? Oh, we find out that she's with Andre, but that goes south very fast, but we'll get there. And so, continuing. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, I promise. So, we learn about Maria Ignatievna Perovskaya, thin and sallow, a maid of honor at the court of Dowager Empress. I just tapped another character just because she's new. And then I have another imagery, and I just literally wrote the imagery exclamation point. This is 485. Everything essential had already been done. Feet, hands, necks, and ears washed, perfumed and powdered, as befits a ball. The open-work silk stockings and white satin shoes with ribbons were already on. The hairdressing was almost done. Sonia was finishing dressing, and so was the Countess, but Natasha, who had bustled about helping them all, was behindhand. She was sitting still before a looking-glass with a dressing jacket thrown over her slender shoulders. Sonia stood ready, dressed in the middle of the room, and pressing the head of a pin till it hurt her dainty finger, and was fixing on a last ribbon that squeaked as the pin went through it. I really love that. I think you can really see all the characters, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Then I have, at that very time, Prince Andre was sitting with Pierre and telling him of his love for Natasha and his firm resolve to make her his wife. And I wrote, I think I like them together much more than Boris, because gross. The only issue is age, but not for the 1800s. I don't know why I wrote that it was gross, because it's not really gross, like her and Boris. But I would rather her and Andre together. But I feel like Pierre is my baby. I love that man with my whole heart. And I want her to be with him because I love her with my whole heart. But, I don't feel like that makes sense. And that's probably not going to happen. But I like that. I like that a lot. Then on the following page, 508, I have a bunch of love things. And it says, "At last I live, but I cannot live without her. But can she love me? I am too old for her. Why don't you speak?" And then Pierre responds with, "I always thought it. That girl is such a treasure. She is a rare girl. My dear friend, I entreat you, do not philosophize. Is that how you say it? Philosophize? Don't doubt. Marry, marry, marry. And I'm sure there will not be a happier man than you. But what of her? She loves you." And then later, Prince Andre says, "I should not have believed anyone who told me I was capable of such love," said Prince Andre. "It is not at all the same feeling that I knew in the past. The whole world is now for me divided in two halves. One half is she, and there is all is joy, hope, light. The other half is everything where she is not, and there is gloom and darkness." "Darkness and gloom," reiterated Pierre. Yes, I understand that. I cannot help loving the light. It is not my fault, and I am very happy. Do you understand me? I know you are glad for my sake." Yes. Pierre assented. It's so cute. I love Andre. He's like a brooding man, and he's very flawed. His relationship with Lise before she died was very flawed, but I feel like he's such a baby. I love him. I just want to cuddle him and tell him, like, it's gonna be okay, because he's such a Mr. Darcy, and I love Mr. Darcy. And then Pierre, I love Pierre. He's grown on me so much. Besides his relationship with Helene, I wanted them to not be together anymore, you know what I mean? But it's fine. And then, Natasha. I love Natasha. She's such a naive little 16-year-old. She reminds me a lot of myself 2 years ago when I was 16. And although she makes a lot of mistakes, I really, really understand her. And, yeah. Next on page 513, I have another love thing. And Prince Andre says, in a year you will learn to know yourself. A whole year, Natasha repeated suddenly, now only realizing that the marriage was postponed for a year. But why a year? Why a year? And then she says, it's awful. Oh, it's awful, awful. Natasha suddenly cried and again burst into sobs. I shall die waiting a year. It's impossible. It's awful. She looked into her lover's face and saw a look of commiseration and perplexity. No, I shall do anything, she said, suddenly checking her tears. I am so happy. The mother and father came into the room and gave the betrothed couple their blessing. So I said, it's really interesting to see Natasha's reaction because she is so young, way too young to be ready for marriage. And just, it's interesting that she's just, like, so beyond in love with this man that she knows but doesn't, like, know like that. I have no idea what I was gonna say. Why can't you see me? There we go. But, it's interesting to see your reaction just because, like, he's like, we're waiting a year because you're not quite ready for marriage, so I want you to wait a year, us to, like, kind of be a little separate, see if we still love each other, see where it's at, and then we'll get married. And, knowing what happens, I'm a little frustrated, but you know what I mean. So, continuing. Then I have another love tab that is, no betrothal ceremony took place, and Natasha's engagement to Bolkonsky was not announced. Prince Andrei insisted on that. He said that he was responsible for the delay. He ought to bear the whole burden of it, that he had given his word and bound himself forever. But he did not wish to bind Natasha and give her perfect freedom. If after 6 months, and gave her perfect freedom, oh my god, re-saying this whole thing, he ought to bear the whole burden of it, that he had given his word and bound himself forever. But that he did not wish to bind Natasha, and gave her perfect freedom. If after 6 months she felt she did not love him, she would have full right to reject him. Naturally, neither Natasha nor her parents wished to hear of this, but Prince Andrei was firm. And I wrote, okay, but I love this. Andrei is, like, literally my favorite. I think he might be my favorite character, because, he's the best. I love him, okay? I do. And then on page 527, I have another beautiful imagery scene, and I have underlined. Oh, this is when the hunt is. Okay. So, basically, what happens is there's this long, drawn-out scene of this hunt that the Rostovs go on, and I didn't care for it. It was boring. It was the monotony of just war in everyday life, of a sense, and I didn't care. But I did like this part. The weather was already growing wintry, and the morning frost congealed an earth saturated by autumn rains. The verdure had thickened, and its bright green stood out sharply against the brownish stripes of winter rye trodden down by the cattle, and against the pale yellow stubble of the spring sowing and the reddish stripes of buckwheat. The wooded ravines and the copses, which at the end of August had still been green islands amid black fields and stubble, had become golden and bright red islands amid the green winter rye. The hares had already half changed their summer coats, the foxglobes were beginning to scatter, and the young wolves were bigger than the dogs. It was the best time of year for the chase. And then I don't have any tabs for a hot sec because I just did not care enough. And then I have things were not cheerful in the Rostovs' home, underlined with black, which is plot. This is page 553, and I wrote, I honestly wish the best for this lot, you know. I want them to all be happy. I freaking love the Rostovs, and I want them to be the Rostovs. I just want them to be happy, and they're not happy, and I would like them to be. And then I have, hang on. Sorry if the angle changed ever so slightly. I took a small break because my throat was sore and my phone is falling. But here we are, and we're going back to it. So then I have a a debate point. So, and do you remember, Natasha asked with a pensive smile, how once long ago, long ago when we were little, Uncle called us into the study. That was an old house, and it was dark. We went in, and suddenly there stood, not an N-word, but like, sort of N-word, Negro. I don't feel like saying it. I don't like the word, but this is a scene. Of course, I remember even now. I don't know whether it was there really was a, or if we dreamt it, or if we told about him. He was gray, you remember, and had white teeth and stood and looked at us. And then, Sonia, do you remember? Yes, blah, blah, blah. I feel like it wasn't necessary. They never talked about it again. I didn't care. So, moving on. Page 567. I have black, which is theory or questions. And I have written, I honestly don't know how I feel about them because I wasn't happy, because I want them happy, but they're cousins. So, Sonia came along wrapped in a cloak. She was only a couple of paces away when she saw him. And to her, he was not the Nikolai she had always known and slightly feared. He was in a woman's dress, with tousled hair and a happy smile new to Sonia. She ran rapidly towards him. Quite different and yet the same, thought Nikolai, looking at her face all lit up by the moonlight. He slipped his arms under the cloak that covered her head, embraced her, pressed him to him, and kissed her on the lips that wore a mustache, and had a smell of burnt cork. Sonia kissed him full on the lips, and disengaging her little hands, pressed them to his cheeks. Sonia, Nicholas, was all they said. And they ran to the barn, and then back again, re-entering, her by the front and she by the back. Porch. I forgot the word porch. But I don't know how I feel about them. I want them to be happy, obviously, but it's a little weird for me, because in the character pages, it says that Sonia has a poor memory of the Rostov family circle, so I don't know if that means that they're cousins or that they're not really related and it's just like a family friend. But if it's the latter, that's still a little weird. But if it's the former, then it's real weird. But either way, that's the thing. And then I love this. This was so cute and gave me big sleepover vibes. I'm not gonna read exactly what happens, but basically, they are playing the game that if you look into a mirror and you stare for long enough, you will see something behind you in the mirror, and it will kind of like describe your life. And they look in it, and they obviously don't see anything because it's a stupid sleepover game. But then Sonia pretends that she sees Andre, and then Natasha's Andre, and she is like, Natasha then responds with, Sonia, when will he come back? When shall I see him? Oh God, how afraid I am for him, and for myself, and about everything. Natasha began, and without replying to Sonia's words of comfort, she got into bed, and long after her candle was lit out, lay open-eyed and motionless, gazing at the moonlights and the frosty window panes. So it's just like, interesting. I don't know. Yeah. I thought it was so cute. It gave me big sleepover vibes, and I just absolutely loved it. And then I have a dislike. Oh, okay. So, soon after the Christmas holidays, Nikolai told his mother of his love for Sonia and has firm resolve to marry her. And the parents don't react very well. And she literally calls her daughter an intriguer? Yeah. So, that's a lot. And just so much happened, and in just 2 pages, I swear, and I don't know what to say about it because just so much happened. Then I have a quote that Emma from Emmy said it, and I also had it underlined. To Pierre, all men seemed like these soldiers, seeking refuge from life, some in ambition, some in cards, some in framing laws, some in women, some in toys, some in horses, some in politics, some in sport, some in wine, and some in governmental affairs. Nothing is trivial, and nothing is important. It's all the same, only to save oneself from it as best one can, thought Pierre, only not to see it, that dreadful it. I really liked that. I don't remember what my thought process was because I didn't write anything, but I thought it was a really interesting take. And that is all I'm going to say. Then I have a blue, which is for sad, and I wrote, I love her and I want better for her. And this is page 587, and oh my god, Count, there are moments when I would marry anybody, she cried suddenly to her own surprise and with tears in her voice. Ah, how bitter it is to love someone near to you and to feel that, she went on in a troubling voice, that you could do nothing for him but grieve him, and to know that you cannot alter this. And then there is only one thing left, to go away, but where could I go? What is wrong? What is it, princess? And without finishing what she was saying, Princess Maria burst into tears. I really feel for her. How bitter is it to love someone near to you and to feel that you could do nothing for him but grieve him. Just felt that. Then I have some quotes. They're all in French, I'm assuming is the language. I don't know French, so I'm just going to read the translations. The first is, rustic trees, your dark branches shed gloom and melancholy upon me. Then, death is redemptive, and death is tranquil. Ah, against sorrow there is no other recourse. And then I have, there is something so enchanting in the smile of melancholy. It is a ray of light in darkness, a shade between sadness and despair, showing the possibility of consolation. And then this, thing that Boris replies with, poisonous food to a soul that is too sensitive, thou without whom happiness would be impossible to me. Tender melancholy. Oh, come to console me. Come and calm the torments of my somber solitude, and unite the sweet secret with these tears of whose flow I am sensible. I don't know, it kind of brought tears to my eyes. I just thought it was really, really beautiful. Okay, moving on. Then I just said I wish they could be together, because I don't remember what happened, but I remember feeling a lot. Hang on. Oh, it's about Julie and Boris. I want them together so badly. This is page 592. He checked himself in the middle of a sentence, lowering his eyes to avoid seeing her unpleasantly irritated and irresolute face, and said, I did not come here at all to quarrel with you. On the contrary. And then he blushed hotly, raised his eyes to hers, and said, you know my feelings for you. There was no need to say more. Julie's face shone with triumph and self-satisfaction. Self-satisfaction, with self-satisfaction, but she forced Boris to say all that is said on such occasions, that he loved her and had never loved any other woman more than her. Then, the affianced couple, no longer alluding to trees that shed gloom and melancholy upon them, planned the arrangements of a splendid house in Petersburg, paid calls, and prepared everything for a brilliant wedding. I just want them together. Then I have a sad thing, and, I have the naivety is showing, and that she's just still 16 in regards to Natasha. So it says, who says this? Oh, Maria Dmitrievna says, you know that old Prince Nikolai much dislikes his son marrying. He's a crotchety old man. Of course, Prince Andrei is not a child and can manage without him, but it is not nice to enter a family against a father's will. You want to do it peacefully and lovingly. You're a clever girl, and you'll know how to manage. Be kind and use your wits, and all will be well. Natasha remained silent from shyness Maria Dmitrievna supposed, but really because she disliked anyone interfering in what touched her love of Prince Andrei, which seemed to her so apart from all human affairs that no one could understand it. She loved and knew Prince Andrei. He loved her only, and was to come one of these days and take her, but she wanted nothing more. And then I have I Wish It Were Different with brown tab, which is dislike, and this is 595. From first glance, Prince Maria did not like Natasha. She thought her too fashionably dressed, frivolously gay, and vain. She did not at all realize that, having seen the future sister-in-law, she was prejudiced against her by involuntary envy of her beauty, youth, and happiness, as well as jealousy of her brother's love for her. Just, Maria is very jealous of Natasha, and it's like the jealousy is showing, honey, calm yourself, but that's another conversation. Then I have a sad tab that it all hurts terribly. Oh, why hasn't he come? She came into dinner with red eyes. I want the best for her, I wrote. So Natasha is just beyond upset that Maria doesn't like her because this is supposed to be her future sister-in-law, and here we are. Then I have, on page 600, I have a big mood, which is a character, like, development. And they're talking about us, about me and him, thought Natasha. And he no doubt is calming her jealousy of me. They needn't trouble themselves. If only they knew how little I am concerned about any of them. Felt that. She's just like overthinking and thinking that they're talking about her, whether they are or not doesn't really matter. She's just like, oh my god, they're talking about me. Like, I don't care about their opinion. Like, it's fine. Felt that. And then on page 608, I have, there goes Anatole ruining everything. I loved Andre and Natasha, but now, will they work or last? So I have written in underlined, I've done nothing. I didn't lead him on at all. Nobody will know, and I shall never see him again, she told herself. So it is plain that nothing has happened and nothing to repent of, and Andre can still love me. But why still? Oh God, why isn't he here? Natasha quieted herself for a moment, but again some instinct told her that though all of this was true, and though nothing had happened, yet the former purity of her love for Prince Andre had perished. And again in imagination she went over the whole conversation with Kurgan again, and their face, gestures, and tender smile of that bold, handsome man when he pressed her arm. Yeah. So, she's now falling for Anatole, so my poor friend Andre, but it's fine. It's fine. And then I have another character thing, and this is about Anatole, and it says, and there was a special reason for this, as he had got married 2 years before, a fact only known to his most intimate friends at the time, while with his regiment in Poland, a Polish landowner of small means had forced him to marry his daughter. Anatole had very soon abandoned his wife, and for a payment which he agreed to send to her father-in-law, had arranged for to be free to pass him off as a bachelor. So Anatole literally ditched his wife. That's all I have to say to Anatole. Then Helene says, my brother dined with me yesterday. We nearly died of laughter. He ate nothing and kept sighing for you, my charmer. And then in French it says, he is quite madly in love with you, my dear. Natasha blushed scarlet when she heard this. Oh, how she blushes, how she blushes. You must certainly come. If you love somebody, my charmer, that is not a reason to shut yourself up. Even if you are engaged, I'm sure your fiancé would wish you to go into society rather than be bored to death. And I wrote no, because I don't want them together. And Helene obviously does, because it's her brother, and she loves her brother, but I'm just like, I don't want them together. But anyway. On page 614, this is when Anatole and Natasha are talking, and she goes, don't say such things to me. I am betrothed and love another, she said rapidly, and she glanced at him. Anatole was not upset or pained by what she had said. Do not speak to me of that. What can I do? Said he. And I tell you I am madly, madly in love with you. Is it my fault that you are enchanting? It's our turn to begin. And then burning lips were pressed to hers. At the same instant she felt herself released, and Helene's footsteps and the rustle of her dress were heard in the room. Natasha looked round at her, and then, red and trembling, threw a frightened look of inquiry at Anatole and moved towards the door. They kissed. We're just going to move past it because I'm angry. Then I have a love, and it's, I love Sonia. Okay, so this is a not cute scene, but, a scene with Sonia, and she goes, on the table beside her lay Anatole's letter. Sonia picked it up and read it. As she read, she glanced at the sleeping Natasha, trying to find it in her face an explanation of what she was reading, but did not find it. Her face was calm, gentle, and happy, clutching her breast to keep herself from choking. Sonia, pale and trembling with fear and agitation, sat down in an armchair and burst into tears. How was it I noticed nothing? How could it get so far? Can she have stopped loving Prince Andre? And how could she let Kurgan go to such lengths? He is a deceiver and a villain, that's plain. And then I have a what the fuck moment, dislike as well. And I put, but it's only now that I feel such love. It is not the same as before. And as soon as I saw him, I felt that he was his master and I was his slave. And that I could not stop loving him. Yes, his slave. Whatever he orders, I will do. Ladies, do not think that you are some man's slave. The fuck? No. No, no, no. And then I have written so naive, but I cannot live without him, cried Natasha. Homegirl, you're 16. You can live without him, I promise. Oh, but then Maria decides to call her a shameless slut. And, yes, what she did was wrong. But she did not deserve to be called a slut. We don't slut shame here. Oh, no, no, no. No, 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 no. I just said, fuck you, she's a child. And then I said, not necessary. Then I have... Oh, okay. So Emma was talking about this in her video, that a lot of times they'll talk about big hands or very dainty hands, and it says Pierre's face, already pale, became distorted by the fury. He seized Anatole by the collar of his uniform with his big hand and shook him from side to side till Anatole's face showed a deficient degree of terror. And I wrote, the difference in big and small hands and places in society. So, like, Pierre is very out of society. He doesn't really know where he belongs. He just kind of is... vibing, and his hands are very big, whereas like Andre's hands are described as very dainty, as like never worked a day in his life kind of hands. And I just find that really interesting, so I just wanted to mark it down once for me. And then I have a green, which is imagery. And I have written, Anatole smiled. The expression of that base and cringing smile, which Pierre knew so well in his wife, revolted him. And then I have some... Oh, and then I have plot. And I wrote, as he should, because Anatole left for Petersburg. And then I have a pretty big section underlined, which basically just describes that Natasha tried to kill herself by swallowing arsenic. But then she woke Sonia up and was like, oh no, I did something bad. And then Sonia went and got people, and then they gave her stuff to like deal with that, but all is well now. And then I have more... Why did I put imagery? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, yes, I do. I knew why it says this. So I have a couple of lines underlined. I much regret her illness, said Prince Andre. And he smiled like his father, coldly, maliciously, and unpleasantly. So, Monsignor Kerrigan has not honored Countess Rostova with his hand, said Prince Andre, and he snorted several times. He could not marry, for he was married already, said Pierre. Prince Andre laughed, disagreeably, again reminding one of his father. I said he's becoming more like his father, and I absolutely hate it. I don't like his father. I don't like Ilya. Is that who it is? Andre's father? Ilya? Yes. Carolyn was saying in her video that both of those videos linked below, but she was saying that or all of those videos, there's more than two. She was saying that she really likes the father. He calls everyone mon cher, and he's just a sweet man. But I see the opposite. I see his darker side. I see his way that he treats some people. I see the way that he treats his family. And although he calls them all mon chéri, or mon cher, however you pronounce that, I don't speak French. It's just, I see the darker side to it, especially when you get these quotes here that, again, laughed disagreeably, again reminding one of his father, where he smiled like his father, coldly, maliciously, and unpleasantly. Just, it's interesting because Carolyn saw the good side to this man, and I am clearly not seeing that. And then this last part is a very nice scene between Pierre and Natasha, which makes me want them together. And it says, don't speak to me like that. I am not worth it, exclaimed Natasha, and turned to leave the room, but Pierre held her hand. He knew he had something more to say to her, but when he said it, he was amazed at his own words. Stop. You have your whole life before you, he said to her. Before me? No, all is over for me, she replied with shame and self-abasement. All over, he repeated. If I were not myself, but the handsome, cleverest, and best man in the world, and were free, I would, this moment, ask on my knees for your hand and your love. I love them. If Helene dies, but she's not going to die because she's Helene. So, here we are. And then I have this last little section I have in green and yellow for quotes and imagery. I'm just going to read the whole thing and then finish out this little section. It was clear and frosty above the dirty, ill-lit streets. Above the black roofs stretched from the dark, starry sky. Only looking up at the sky did Pierre cease to feel how sordid and humiliating were all the mundane things compared with the heights to which his soul had just been raised. At the entrance to the abrupt square, an immense expanse of dark, starry sky presented itself to his eyes. Almost in the center of it, above the Pushtinska boulevard surrounded by, sprinkling on all sides by stars, but distinguished from them all by its nearness to the earth, its white light, its long uplifted tail, shone the enormous and brilliant comet of the year 1812, the comet which is said to portend all kinds of woes and end of the world. In Pierre, however, that comet with its long, luminous tail aroused no feeling of fear. On the contrary, he gazed joyfully, his eyes moist with tears, at the bright comet which, having traveled in its orbit with inconceivable velocity through immeasurable space, seemed suddenly, like an arrow piercing the earth, to remain fixed in a chosen spot, vigorously holding its tail erect, shining, and displaying its white light amid countless other scintillating stars. It seemed to Pierre that this comet fully responded to what was passing in his own softened and uplifted soul, now blossoming into a new life. So I just really liked the imagery of this comet and Pierre really relating to it and really just like understanding what it was and understanding himself more. And it was really interesting. And so that is parts 1 and 2. I am now about halfway, I would say. Yeah, probably halfway. And I'm really, really loving it. I'm like, it's a good time. I think I'm going to read the next 2 parts of this and then update you guys and close out this video. So I'm going to read up into part 2 of book 3. So if you haven't read up to that part yet, or you don't want to hear my thoughts, then again, goodbye. But and then my last video will be the epilogue, part 4, and the last 2 parts of part 3. I don't know why I said that backwards, but that is what the last video will be. But yeah, I'm really excited. Just life is exciting. This book is exciting. I'm loving it so much. I don't think it's a 5-star for me right now, unless it ends like really, really well. But we will find out. Stay tuned for that. And yes, I'm really excited, so I am going to update you guys later. Hi guys, so if you saw in that last clip, I was like covering my mouth because something major happened and I can't tell you about it right now. I will get to it at the end of the next clip, but then I was accidentally time-lapsing the clip of me talking instead of videoing it like a normal person. So that is what was happening when I was going like this. And then I said I'm going to finish this chapter and then I'm going to go into my through the tabs for the part 1 and part 2 of book 3. So that is what is going to happen right now. Hi guys, I'm back and I am going to be sharing with you guys part 1 and part 2 of War and Peace book 3. I don't have too many tabs, so like this shouldn't be super long, hopefully, but we will find out. So the first is on page 649 and it says, each man lives for himself, using his freedom to attain his personal aims, and feels with his whole being that he can now do or abstain from doing this or that action. But as soon as he has done it, that action is performed at a certain moment in time, becomes irrevocable, and belongs to history, in which it is not a free but predestined significance. There are 2 sides to life of every man: his individual life, which is the more free, the more abstract its interests, and his elemental swarm life, in which he inevitably obeys laws laid down for him. And I just wrote meant to be yellow. Oh, quotes. That's a quote instead of imagery. I don't know why I underlined that with green. That was a mistake. But then on the following page, 650, I have another quote section that is, when an apple has ripened and falls, why does it fall? Because its attraction to the earth? Because its stalk withers? Because it is dried by the sun? Because it grows heavier? Because the wind shakes it? Or because the boy standing below wants to eat it? Nothing is the cause. All this is only the coincidence of conditions in which all vital, organic, and elemental events occur. And the botanist who finds the apple falls because the cellular tissue decays and so forth is equally right with the child who stands under it and says the apple fell because he wanted to eat it and prayed for it. I don't know, I thought that was really interesting. That, like, analogy, I guess it is, but I don't really have more thoughts on that because I am not a philosophy major. I am an English major, so yes, they go hand in hand, but we're not gonna go deeply into this because I don't want to. And then on 673, I have another quote. It says, it was as if the lofty infinite canopy of heaven that had once towered above him had suddenly turned into a low solid vault that weighed him down, in which all was clear, but nothing eternal or mysterious. So, again, it's a quote. That's all I have. Alrighty, and then I have a character thing. This is a character, like, development type of thing about Prince Andrei, and it says, of all these men, Prince Andrei sympathized most with Fuel? I'm just going to call him Fuel. Angry, determined, and absurdly self-confident as he was. Of all those present, evidently he alone was not seeking anything for himself, nursed no hatred against anyone, and only desired that the plan, formed on the theory arrived at by years of toil, should be carried out. He was ridiculous and unpleasantly sarcastic, but yet he had inspired involuntary respect by his boundless devotion to an idea. I just thought that was an interesting development of Andrei's. Then I have a theory, and I wrote, oh my god, what things people believe. It's so interesting, though. So I have written, writing the words of the Emperor Napoleon in numbers, it appears that the sum of them is 666, and that Napoleon is therefore the beast foretold in the apocalypse. Moreover, by applying the same system to the words 42, it's written in French though, which the term allowed the beast that spoke great things and blasphemies, the sum of those numbers have been derived from 42, again called 666, from which it followed that the limit fixed for Napoleon's power had come in the year 1812 when the French emperor was 42. This prophecy pleased Pierre very much, and he often asked himself what would put an end to the power of the beast, that is, of Napoleon, and tried the same system using letters and numbers and adding them up to find an answer to the question that engrossed him. And then there's like this huge paragraph right here. I highlighted the first part, but then the second half is just Pierre trying to figure out if he is like this beast, and it's so funny because, like, calm yourself, buddy. I'm gonna put a funny tab there, actually. Okay, I have added a purple funny tab because I just thought that was so amusing. Like, the things that people will believe is just interesting to me. Then I have pink and brown, which the pink is love and the brown is dislike. So I first have pink. Why are you going? Why are you upset? Asked Natasha, and she looked challengingly into Pierre's eyes. Because I love you was all he wanted to say, but he did not say it, and only blushed till tears came and lowered his eyes. Because it is better for me to come less often. Because no, I simply have business. And then this is the brown part that I underlined. Why? No, tell me, Natasha began resolutely, and suddenly stopped. They looked at each other with dismayed and embarrassed faces. He tried to smile, but he could not. His smile expressed suffering, and he silently kissed her hand and went out. Pierre made up his mind not to go to the Rostovs anymore. Then later, he's on the battlefield, and he is thinking about how was it on the battlefield? Just later, he was thinking about how he shouldn't have stopped going to the Rostovs because of Natasha, and it was just interesting. So then on page 725, whatever, I'm not going to say those pages numbers because I forgot, but this is on 725. I have read, which is plot, and it says, happy as Petya was, he felt sad at having to go home knowing that all the enjoyment of the day was over. He did not go straight home from Kremlin, but he called on his friend Oblensky, who was 15 and also entering the regiment. On returning home, Petya announced resolutely and firmly that he was not allowed to enter the service. He would run away. And the next day, Count Ilya Rostov, though he had not quite yielded, went to inquire how he could arrange for Petya to serve where there would be the least danger. And I wrote, he's gonna die. I really hope he doesn't die. I love him. He's such a cute little guy. Then I have a really moment. It's orange, which is like debate points. For debate points, it's pretty much just like the problematic things that they do. In like Dickens and Tolstoy's time. So this one is just a fad. Oh, and then it's a French word. Basically, the French word means, hang on, let me find it, 731. This is on page 731, by the way. Figured I should say that this time, because I did not last time. 731. It's a merchant who possesses a special license for the sale of a liquor, and it was just not necessary to call him fat. It just wasn't. Continuing, because it wasn't saying. I guess it's not really that mean, because like, especially fat like influencers are trying to say that calling someone fat isn't an insult. It's just like a descriptive word, and it shouldn't be taken as ugly, because fat does not equal ugly. And you shouldn't respond with, oh, but you're beautiful, because that's not the correct response. Fat and ugly do not equate each other. So I guess it's not really an issue, but like, it just didn't need to be said. Did it? Anyway, 737. I have a plot. Princess Maria spent half of every day with little Nikolushka, watching him his lessons, teaching him Russian and music herself, and talking to Desales. The rest of the day she spent over her books, with her old nanny, or with God's folk, who sometimes came by the back door to see her. Of the war, Princess Maria thought as women do think about wars. She feared for her brother who was in it, was horrified by and amazed by the strange cruelty that impels men to kill one another. But she did not understand the significance of this war, which seemed to her like all previous wars. She did not realize the significance of... Oh. I literally just read the same sentence again. Oh no, she says it again. She does not realize the significance of this war, though Desales, with whom she constantly conversed, was passionately interested in its progress and tried to explain his own conception of it to her. And through the God's folk who came to see her, reported in their own way the rumors current among the people of an invasion by the Antichrist. And though Julie, now Princess Dubetskaya, she married Boris, who had resumed correspondence with her, wrote patriotic letters from Moscow. Again, it's a plot. Do I need to go into it? Not really, or I could, but here we are. 752, I have imagery, and it says, heat and drought had continued for more than 3 weeks. Each day, fleecy clouds floated across the sky and occasionally veiled the sun. But towards evening, the sky cleared again, and the sun set in reddish-brown mist. Heavy night dews alone refreshed the earth. The unreaped corn was scorched and shed its grain. The marshes dried up. The cattle lowered from hunger, finding no food on the sun-patched meadows. Only at night and in the forest, while the dew lasted, there was any freshness. But on the road, the high road along which the troops marched, there was no such freshness, even at night, or when the road passed through the forest. The dew was imperceptible on the sandy dust turned up more than 6 inches deep. I just thought it was interesting. I liked that like a lot. I read it like 6 times, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna underline it. Then I have another plot. It says the doctor who was fetched the same night bled him and said that the prince had a seizure, paralyzing his right side. Basically, Count Ilya died. Ilya? No. Maria and Andrei's dad. What's his name? We're going to the beginning. Nikolai Andreevich Bolkonsky. Again, Russian names, not my forte. Then I have a sad moment, which was his death. No, he's not dead. It's impossible, she told herself, and approached him, and repressing the terror that seized her, she pressed his lips to his cheek, but she stepped back immediately. All the force of the tenderness she had been feeling for him vanished instantly, and was replaced by a feeling of horror at what lay there before her. No, he is no more. He is not, but here, where he was, is something unfamiliar and hostile, something dreadfully terrifying, repellent mystery. Some dreadful, terrifying, repellent mystery. And hiding her face in her hands, Princess Maria sank into the arms of the doctor who held her up. I don't want to talk about it. I didn't want him to die, but he was old, so I guess it makes sense, but, like, he didn't need to die. Then on chapter 11 of part 2, we have 781. It's another plot point. And they probably think I'm offering to help them gain to bribe them to remain here while I myself go away, leaving them to the mercy of the French, thought Princess Maria. I will offer them monthly rations at housing or Moscow State, and I'm sure Andre would do even more in my place, she thought as she went out to the twilight towards the crowd standing at the pasture by the barn. So basically, she was bribing them with grain to remain in their house, to remain in the castle. And they were like, no. And she was like, I don't understand. And then they were just like, she's a shrewd one. Follow her into slavery. Pull down your houses and go into bondage. That's not likely. I'll give you grain indeed, she says. I don't know. I don't really understand what's happening. Someone please explain it to me because a bitch is confused. Then I have a quote that I really like. I've highlighted a lot, but basically the quote I like is, all things come to he who knows how to wait. I thought that was like an interesting way of putting it, and I'm sure it sounds much more pretty in French, but there's a saying in English that is, all good things come to those who know how to wait, which I just thought the French edition was pretty cool because the English edition usually is trash, so am I wrong? No. Then I have a couple of sad tabs. The first is on 825, and it says, the 3 great sorrows of his life. Oh, Andre. Held his attraction in particular, his love for a woman, his father's death, and the French invasion which had overrun half Russia. Love, that little girl who seemed to me brimming over with mystic forces. How I loved her. I made romantic plans of love and happiness with her. Oh, what a boy I was, he said aloud bitterly. How could I? I believed in some ideal love which seemed to keep her faithful to me for the whole year of my absence, like a gentle dove in the fable. She was to pine apart from me. But it was much simpler, really. It was all very simple and horrible. And I just wrote, my poor Andre. I love Andre, and I just want the best for him, and he is not getting the best. You know, he is sad. He is now wounded. And I am upset. But we will get there. Okay. Then on 833, I have a moment of sadness. And it is, he closed his eyes. One picture succeeded another in his imagination. On one of them he dwelt long and joyfully. He vividly recalled an evening in Petersburg. Natasha, with an animated and excited face, was telling him how she had gone to look for mushrooms the previous summer and had lost her way in the big forest. She incoherently described the depths of the forest, her feelings, and a talk with a beekeeper she met, and constantly interrupted her story to say, "No, I can't. I'm not telling it right. No, you don't understand." Though he encouraged her by saying that he did understand, and that he had to understand all she wanted to say. But Natasha was not satisfied with her own words. She felt that they did not convey the passionately poetic feeling she had experienced that day and wished to convey. He was such a treasure, that old man. It was so dark in the forest, and he had such a kind... "No, I can't describe it," she said, flushed and excited. Prince Andrei smiled, now the same happy smile as then when he looked into her eyes. I understood her, he thought. I not only understood her, but it was just the inner spiritual force, that sincerity, that frankness of soul, that very soul of hers which seemed to be fettered by her body. It was that soul I loved in her, loved so strongly and happily. And then suddenly he remembered how his love had ended. He did not need anything of that kind. He neither saw nor understood anything of the sort. He only saw her in a pretty and fresh young girl, with whom he did not deign to unite his fate. And he is still alive and happy. I put a bunch of sad faces, because he's just like reminiscing on my girl, and he's sad, and I'm therefore sad. It's just like a whole sad hot mess. Then I have this little tiny section at the bottom, which then goes into that long section there, on page 855 and 856, chapter 32, and it's green, so it's imagery, and I really like this war scene. I've been enjoying the war scenes in part 2 of book 3 a lot more, and I figured I just needed to mention one of them. But he had not had time to realize that the colonel had been killed, that the soldier shouting "Brothers" was a prisoner, and that another man had been bayoneted in the back before his eyes. For hardly had he run into the redoubt before a thin, sallow-faced, perspiring man in a blue uniform rushed on him, sword in hand, shouting something, instinctively guarding against the shock, for they had been running together at full speed before they saw one another. Pierre put out his hands and seized a man, a French officer, by the shoulder with one hand and by the throat with the other. The officer, dropping his sword, seized Pierre by the collar. For some seconds they gazed with frightened eyes at one another's unfamiliar faces, and both were perplexed at what they had done and what they were to do next. Am I taken prisoner, or have I taken him prisoner? Each was thinking. But the French officer was evidently more inclined to think that he had been taken prisoner, because Pierre's strong hand, impelled by instinctive fear, squeezed his throat even tighter and tighter. The Frenchman was about to say something, when just above their heads, terrible and low, a cannonball whistled, and it seemed to Pierre that the French officer's head had been torn off so swiftly that he had ducked it. So swiftly had he ducked it. Whew, that made sense. Wait, the French officer's head was torn off? Oh my god, I didn't read that the first time. So the French officer was decapitated, and Pierre ducked it. Good for Pierre. He's not dead. Unlike the other guy. And then I just have a tiny line here, and I just wrote, Andre's hurt. So, with an exclamation point, at one point he goes, I do not wish to die. I love life. I love this grass, this earth, this air. And basically there's this huge section that I, wrote about here that, is just him being hurt. He was wounded in battle, and now he's bleeding out on the grass, and then he gets taken to, the infirmary. And then at the infirmary on page 873, that last one was 870, I underlined, hearing those moans, Prince Andre wanted to weep, whether because he was dying without glory, or because he was sorry to part with life, or because those memories of a childhood that he could not return, or because he was suffering and others were suffering, that man near him was groaning so piteously. He felt like a weeping child. Weeping childlike, kindly, and almost happy tears. First, he didn't want to die without glory. Honey, it's war. You don't want to die with glory. You don't want to die. God almighty. I don't understand it. I don't understand, man. And then there was just the man weeping, who we then find out is Anatole. I hate Anatole, but he is wounded, so I have a little sympathy. And then I underlined a bunch of stuff right here, and I'm going to read that to you. And then that is my last tab, as you can see. So it says, what is this connection? Okay, so I need to read the sign before. Anatole was sobbing painfully. Yes, it is he. Yes, that man who's somehow closely and painfully connected with me, thought Prince Andre, not yet clearly grasping what he had saw before him. What is the connection of that man with my childhood and my life? He asked himself without finding an answer, and suddenly a new, unexpected memory from that realm of pure and loving childhood presented itself to him. He remembered Natasha that he'd seen her for the first time at the ball in 1810, with her slender neck and arms, and with a frightened face ready for rapture, and love and tenderness for her, stronger and more vivid than ever, awoke in his soul. He now remembered the connection that existed between himself and this man, who was dimly gazing at him through tears that filled his swollen eyes. He remembered everything, and ecstatic pity and love for that man overflowed his happy heart. Prince Andre could no longer restrain himself, and wept tender, loving tears for his fellow men, for himself, and for his own and other. Prince Andre could no longer restrain himself, and wept tender, loving tears for his fellow men, for himself, and for his own and their errors. Compassion, love our brothers, for those who love us and those who hate us. Love of our enemies, yes, that love which God preached on earth, and which Princess Maria taught me, and I did not understand. That is what made me sorry to part with life. That is what remained for me, though I have lived. But now it is too late. I know it. So, for Anatole, I just wrote, whoa, didn't see that coming. And then I wrote, he better not die for Andre, because I love Andre with my whole soul. And then, I wanted to say with that last part that, I think it's interesting that he kind of forgave Natasha almost, that development right there. I thought that was really interesting and really well done on Tolstoy's part. I feel like it's hard to be like, oh, he did this poorly, oh, he did this well, when this is the most critically acclaimed book in the entire world. I don't know, but I feel like he did it really well. So I'm gonna say that he did it really well. I'm at almost 22 minutes, so I am going to stop right here. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you soon for my last War and Peace reading vlog. And we will find out if anybody actually dies on the battlefield, because so far, none of our main characters have. Bye.